Really, good morning.
Right.
Good morning, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you. Good morning. Good morning.
Very good morning.
Benson, you are able to join? Right. Yeah. Mr. Benson,
Good morning, sir.
Yes.
good morning.
Good
Some
morning.
issue with. All right. All right. Yeah. So, with permission of the director, I would like to begin now. A very good morning to all, and warm greetings to our speakers from Kenya, especially Turkey, Philippines, Bangladesh, and Uzbekistan, and Afghanistan, who might be at different time zones. So warm greeting to all of you. Usually we have the practice of starting any program at the institution with a prayer to emit a positive frequency, vibrations, and also to have faith that the program would run smoothly. So I will chant a short sloka to begin the session. Asato ma sadgamaya 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 Asato ma sadgamaya Tamaso ma Jyotirgamaya, Jyotirgamaya, Jyotirgamaya. Mrityorma, Amritam gamaya, Amritam gamaya, Amritam gamaya. Thank you so much. Respected Director, Mr. Basavaraj C. Gavanahalli, Dr. Hema Ramnathan, Dr. Padmini Bora, Dr. S.P. Dhanavel, Dr. Ashley, Dr. Mohan Raj sir, Dr. Parthasarathi Mishra sir, and my members of the faculty, RIESI, and the staff at IT for Change. Other speakers, panelists, paper presenters, delegates, and others. As a host institution representing RISI Bangalore, I would like to, RISI Bangalore and IT for Change, I'm here to quickly introduce the two organizations. RISI, headed by Dr. Basavaraj C. Gavanahalli, is a premium institution located at Bangalore. It was established in the year 1963, and the main objective of the institution was to improve the standards of English language teaching at southern states, at various southern states, namely Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Telangana, Union Territory of Pondicherry, and also Lakshadweep. The institution runs different programs, especially the Certificate in English Language Teaching, which trains the English teachers from high school and primary from across all the states. Besides that, we have other distance mode programs like PGDLT, Diploma in English Language Teaching, and the institution is involved in various materials development program, research program, and other programs assigned by the government of the southern state. And besides that, we also organize various conferences like this, and we have done a face-to-face conference earlier, and this time we have plunged into online conference because of the pandemic situation. Another organization is IT for Change, headed by Dr. Mr. Gurumurthy Kashinathan. The organization has collaborated with RISI for about 3 years, and they have helped us in starting an online and also blended mode of teaching English. And with their cooperation, we have been able to carry out various programs. The organization was established in the year 2000, and they have their main vision is to contribute both digitally, both to the both for social justice and equity. And they have different domains in which they work, namely governance of the digital economy, digital rights, rights and democracy, digital technology, and gender justice in digital society. Besides that, they also adopt various research, field projects, and policy advocacy and consulting approaches for the holistic approach. So they are the organization who has collaborated with us, and it is through their assistance and help, and of course the collaboration, that we are able to today organize an online conference. Yes. So with this, I would move on to mentioning the main objectives of the conference. Now, we generally conduct the face-to-face program, but because of the COVID-19 pandemic, we had to shift into the online mode of the conference. And considering the COVID-19 pandemic situation and followed by the lockdown, we realized that all the stakeholders are in a way confused as to how to deal with teaching, and especially with respect to English language teaching in regards to policy decisions to be taken, the mode of transaction, what syllabus, cutting down of syllabus, reduction of syllabus, examination, and different emotional and probably struggles that the parents and the students would have faced. And also thinking about what next to be done if the pandemic continues for a few more years to come. So hence we have invited speakers from India and abroad, paper presenters, and through this process we have made an attempt to bring together all of educators from India and abroad to be able to share their experience of how they have dealt with the teaching of English during the pandemic, and also perhaps to suggest few ideas and strategies and solutions that to grapple with this new normal situation, and also what next to be done if the third wave of pandemic hits us. So with this, I would wish all a very fruitful and a rich experience of assimilating knowledge and ideas and insights from very renowned speakers, panelists that we have. And I wish all the best to all the paper presenters for their presentation. So with this, I would like to invite Dr. Uzma S. Rahil, my colleague, to kindly welcome the gathering. Thank you.
Good morning. Pooja, I think it's director who's going to speak now. Dr. Pooja?
Please welcome everyone. Uzma, welcome. Welcome.
Come, and then the director would speak. All right? Yeah.
Pardon?
You can welcome, and then after that, the director would speak. Yes.
All right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me great pleasure to welcome the virtual gathering today, the first of its kind in the history of our institute. To begin with, I would like to welcome the board members, principal secretaries of primary and secondary education of all the member states, Commissioner of School Education, and a very warm welcome to the Director of the Regional Institute of English, South India, Bengaluru, Mr. Basavaraj C. Gavanadi, who's been the backbone of all efforts put in for the conference by the teams of RIESI and IT for Change. I take immense pleasure in welcoming the plenary session speakers of both the days of the conference, Dr. Hema Ramnathan, former Associate Professor, University of West Georgia, Carrollton, USA, and Dr. S.P. Dhanwal, Professor, English, Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, IIT Madras, Chennai. The moderators, Dr. Padmini Borova, Professor and Head, Department of ELT, Gauhati University, and Mr. Gurumurthy Kashinathan, Founder and Director, IT for Change. Along with the panelists from across the globe, namely Turkey, Bangladesh, Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, Kenya, Philippines, and different parts of India, thus giving us a flavor of international experience. Further, I would like to extend a warm welcome to our esteemed chairpersons of both the days, Dr. S. Mohan Raj, Professor, EFLU Hyderabad, Dr. Partha Sarthi Mishra, Visiting Faculty, Azim Premji University, Dr. Shema Jose, Assistant Professor, EFLU Hyderabad, Dr. S. Gurraj, former faculty RISI, Mr. Gurumurthy Kashinathan, Founder and Director, IT for Change, along with all the faculty of RISI. Furthermore, I would wish to welcome all the paper presenters of the conference, the technical support and administrative staff of RISI and IT for Change, and not to forget all our esteemed online guests for 2 days. On behalf of the Regional Institute of English, South India, Bengaluru, and IT for Change, I wish you all an invigorating experience. Hope the discussions, the presentations, and ensuing discussions would appeal to all your graces. Thank you, and let's have a fruitful session for 2 days.
Uzman, perhaps you can just switch on your camera for a while. I will join from the other camera. I have a camera issue. Right. Thank you. Thank you, Uzman, for that.
Yes, I'm not able to click in here. I think it's...
Right. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Madam, for welcoming the gathering. Now, I would like to request our Honorable Director, Mr. Basavaraj C. Governor Halli, to for the presidential address. Sir.
Good morning, everyone. Dear dignitaries, plenary speakers, paper presentators, and delegates. At the outset, I am happy to host this online conference for 2 days and also to inaugurate this event today. The pandemic has forced us to meet online and conduct the deliberation on virtual platform. It is important now more than ever to come together, discuss, share ideas, and gather new thoughts, practices, and skills. The pandemic has given us an opportunity to meaningfully look to our past in order to re-envision our future. Though there is a huge disruption in teaching and learning, the pandemic year has helped us think of different possibilities of continuing education and engaging ourselves in continual professional development in order to facilitate a wider sharing of new ideas, insights gained from the experiences, and to disseminate research findings. We have organized this virtual conference on the theme English language teaching during pandemic times, grappling with the new normal on 25th and 26th June 2021. The Regional Institute of English, a premier institute in India, has been organizing all India seminars almost every year on them related to English language education over all these years. On its sprawling Jnana campus, however, we are hosting the event online this year with the support of IT for Change, a non-governmental organization working for the cause of education. As this is an of IT for international conference, the event will help us gain a global perspective on the teaching and learning of English during the COVID-19 pandemic. We are overwhelmed by huge response to our call for conference abstracts. After a careful review, we have accepted 148 abstracts that are related 8 different sub-themes of the conference. We have compiled all the selected abstracts of the papers for presentation at the virtual conference. We are certain that reading these abstracts and then listening to the paper presentations over the 2 days will be a great learning, enjoyable and fulfilling experience. We are equally delighted to have eminent plenary speakers and panelists for both the day of the conference. We are glad more than 150 delegates have registered for this online international event. We express our sincere gratitude to all of you for your great interest in our academic endeavors. I would also like to convey my special thanks to the wonderful team that we have RIESI Bangalore, who have made this event possible by their sincere, committed work. I declare the conference inaugurated and wish all of you the very best.
Thank you, sir, for your inaugural address and for the support that you have rendered to us. Now, I would like to request the most awaited presentation of Dr. Hema Ramnathan to begin the plenary speech. Over to you, Hema Madam.
Good morning and welcome to a 2-day seminar.
Excuse me, madam. I would like to introduce you to the audience.
Okay, sorry about that.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Okay.
So, madam, you also can switch on if it is working.
Yes, sure.
Yeah, you can begin, madam.
Yes.
So, ma'am, are you there? Yeah.
Sure. Good morning once again. I'd like to introduce to you the plenary session of the plenary speaker of the session today, Dr. Hema Ramnathan, former Associate Professor, University of Georgia, Carrollton, USA. Dr. Hema Ramnathan believes that education is a public discipline, teaching is a social act, and research in education should mirror these concepts. Her academic focus is teacher education with an emphasis on diversity, especially language diversity and ELT. Her teaching career began over 40 years ago in schools of Chennai, Rishi Valley, and Delhi, along with 5 degrees, including a certificate of teaching English from EFLU and a master's in English literature. Further, teaching experience was garnered in English language schools in Indonesia and an international school in Malaysia. Her PhD from the Ohio State University, USA, focused on teacher education with a minor in ELT. For over 20 years in the US, she taught teacher education at Butler University and the University of West Georgia, USA. Dr. Ramnathan has about 120 publications, including books, book chapters, academic articles, and reports over a wide range of topics covering ELT, teacher education, teacher professional development, and racial diversity in academia in the USA. She is also the series editor of the English textbook series Weavers, published by Indianica Learning, and has co-authored 5 of the 8 grade level books. She has consulted, advised, and implemented curriculum for leadership programs for principals and teachers in government schools in Delhi and Sikkim. She currently designs and implements holistic teacher professional development with a well-defined component of English language teaching and learning for schools, teachers, and students in India and Bangladesh. Ma'am, it's a great privilege to have you in our midst and listen to your talk. So I warmly welcome you to this plenary session. So let's listen to you now.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. I need to be able to share my presentation, and I don't see the little cross that will enable me to do that. So I need IT help here. All right, got it. Give me 1 second while I bring it up, and then we can get going. Okay, it's coming up, and it should be up here soon enough. Okay, can all of you see this now? Can I have a yes?
ma'am. Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
great.
We can
Yes,
see.
yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you. Thank you. Then we're all set to go. I have about 45, 50 minutes of the time, I think now. And I'm going to be talking about some of the overarching issues that I see will be picked up in both the other plenary tomorrow and many of the panel sessions, and the panel speakers, and the individual sessions. I will also be referring to a particular professional development endeavor that I've been working with in Bangladesh for about a year, as a reference about what works and what doesn't, and what we've had. There will be time for question and answers at the end of the session. So maybe what you can do is either put the questions down in the private chat, or come up with them and unmute yourself and come up with your questions at the end of the session. And I hope that'll be okay. I've called my talk Challenges, Responses, Disappointments, and Successes, because I think we've been through all of those parts of how we approach a problem. And let's talk about what the problem has been. Okay. We have challenges in both the personal and the professional areas of our lives. And often we tell teachers when we have a face-to-face class, leave your personal problems at the door. Check them at the door and don't bring them into the class. We've not been able to do that now. This period of time has not allowed us to do that. The personal challenges that we've had, whether they be illness and death, and all of us have experienced some of that, either one or both at some point. We've had no downtime because we've been working from home, most of us. Everybody's been home. Nobody's been able to go out. I'm in Chennai and we're on lockdown, which means that people are at home most of the time. And people are working and studying and teaching from home. There's been lack of privacy. Usually when as teachers we work, we either do it in the staff room when we are preparing, or when we're grading, we may take things home. But we usually do that after the kids are in bed, or the household is kind of retired for the evening. That hasn't been possible all the time now. We face financial constraints. Having everybody at home has meant a different kind of outlay of finances. Sometimes it's meant getting another device or two. It's also meant sharing technology with the family, which again has not been easy for many of us, because if we have 3 or 4 members and we have 2 devices and we all need them all the time. But I think one of the major issues we've had has been with, as teachers, being a parent and a teacher at the same time to 2 different sets of children, and having to negotiate that identity differently and yet the same. And that's caused confusion to a lot of teachers who also happen to be parents. We're all used to using tech. We use it to talk, we use it for selfies, we use it to connect to the internet, we watch movies on it, we've sent out invitations, we've sent out personal communications. A smartphone is almost a given right now, especially after the past year. And the flip phone doesn't work as well as we would like it to. When we come to the professional perspectives on what we've had a problem with and what changes we've had to make because of that, this, I think, is something that all of us understand. We knew when we were in a face-to-face setting which classroom we had to be in. We knew where we had to go. We knew where our students had to be. And yet, online, there is no internet connection, has been the bane, and I'm hoping it won't happen right now. We've either had it because we've had electricity failures, because we've had Wi-Fi failures, because there are too many devices that are trying to connect at the same time, and we have to be able to manage that. So just being there has been problematic for us, which is not something that we've needed to worry about for ourselves. We also know that when we are in a classroom, we can see the students. The student, as you can see on the left picture, may try to hide behind a book. And we all know what that looks like. But we know that we can see the child, and we know what the child is asking. We know what the child is doing. The child up here is reading, and the child down there is saying, which page is that? Where am I supposed to be? And yet what we are confronted with for the most part now is what we see on the right-hand side, the invisibility of our students. Their names to us. We don't see them, and therefore that brings a lot of issues of, as you shall see now, different classrooms. We know what our classroom looks like, and we're very proud of our classrooms in an F2F. We also know what we would like if students are learning from home, which is a really nice chair, a desk, and a desktop which is large enough. The reality is what we see on the extreme right. A bed is converted into a classroom. And we know that that is not the ideal situation in which students have to write. To getting students to write when they are sitting like this is difficult. In fact, it is not a very good idea physically for students to be sitting cross-legged like this for 3 or 4 hours of a day. And yet that is what we have to confront and deal with. We talk about control. One of the major issue for teachers in any classroom, in any survey about what is your major problem in a classroom, is control. We don't even call it management at times. We just call it control of a classroom. And we just don't have that. For one thing, we are not the major teachers here. It is a parent at home. The parent at home has to look to connectivity, has looked to access, has looked to whether students are in the classroom, they're attending, and that students don't have the deer caught in the headlights look that the child in the right picture has. We don't have control of the context, of the situation, of the response. So it has been a very difficult time for teachers to recognize, what do I do? How do I make my students be there and listen to me? How do I motivate them? How do I engage them? Those are issues that have been at the forefront of what teachers have been thinking about. And much of that has been because of the lack of physical proximity with our students. On the right-hand side, if we see a student doing that, putting their head down and sleeping, we know that in a face-to-face classroom, we know what to do. We know to go up and either wake the student up and say, are you feeling okay? Put a hand on the child and say, would you like to go get a drink of water? Go wash your face. Are you not feeling well? Would you like to go see the school nurse? In the case of the second, where the child is the student is at home and really doesn't get it, we don't see it. Primarily because we don't see the student. When we have this situation on the right, where we have a problem with where are our students, what can we expect of them, how are they actually feeling, and are they totally disengaged from the class? In such a situation, when we don't have contact with our students, when we don't know what we do, what they do and what we can do, so many of us work with physical proximity, not only to keep control of the students, but to take the temperature of the class, to do a scan of how students are responding, what kind of changes we need to make on the fly, what we need to say and do. We work with eye contact, we work with body, we work with the proximate physical presence for both connecting with our students and managing what our students are learning and when. And when we don't have that physical proximity, we don't quite know what to do and how to work with. We worked with technology. We worked with technology even before the pandemic. We worked to take photographs. We worked to record what was happening, physically record it. During the pandemic, when we have to teach away, we either record our lessons, and we've learned how to do that. So the phone has not just been a selfie, but it's become a professional tool, and we've become professional photographers. So how we look and how we look on camera is different always from how we look on in a face-to-face. Whether we're doing it as a recording, or whether we're doing it as an instant, like it's done in the right-hand side picture, whether it is delayed or instant transmission, we've worked with devices mostly the phone, the smartphone, and the laptop. And we've needed both at times to be able to conduct our classes. And we've needed to be cinematographers, not merely teachers. The other area that we have of our teaching that we don't necessarily see, classroom language. We often talk about the classroom language that we use in the classrooms. Essentially, what do teachers say and how can we say what we say? Okay, let's take a look at how we say things online and face-to-face. In an online, we say, can you please admit me? Sorry, I joined the class late. Whereas a student in online, in a face-to-face says, please may I come in? And you can see the student there. Whereas when the student says, admit me, you're not quite sure where the student is and whether it is a student. That is not somebody bombing your class. The I don't know. I don't know. What is the answer to this? I don't know. Comes sometimes with, my connection is too slow, I can't get to that. This is something that all of us work with. I didn't bring my book to class. There are students that say, I'm on my mobile, not my laptop, so I can't go to the other site. I can't access Google when I'm on this platform, which is the equivalent of, I can't access what you're telling me to access. And how do we usually deal with, I didn't bring my book to class? Think about that for a second. We'll come back to that. I can't see the board. Online gets translated to, the screen is blank. Or, I haven't finished with that. Would you please not turn it off? Is essentially, can you hang on a minute while I copy the last line down? Like now, most of you are muted. You've been asked to be muted. And some of you may be burning to unmute and make comments. And this is the equivalent of a hand shooting up in a classroom and saying, me, can I please? Here, we have to wait for permission. The student has to wait for permission to say, would you please unmute me? To be recognized. Is the class finished? Can we leave, log off? The may I leave the room? And we usually have students who say, I need to go to the loo. And this is the online class. So the online class language, whether it's bye or I need to go to the loo, becomes much more casual than we are used to. And that is not all, that doesn't sit well with all of us. This is something that we've heard and we say, should we cancel our camera? Can we cancel the microphone? Can we mute, unmute? What do we as teachers then say? This is something that all of us in schools and classrooms say, quiet, no talking, silence. And that is the teacher language that is seen most commonly. Research says that, and that is also the language or the phrase that shuts down learning and enthusiasm in a classroom. And yet, one of the first things we say when we come on screen is, could all of you please mute and remain muted while I give instructions? And many students then forget to unmute. So you don't see them. They are muted. So you don't know if they're really there. Or whether they're reading, whether they're playing games. We don't know what they're doing. In a school, when we say there's too much noise, please shut the window and the door, it does cause a problem. Here we turn down and say, please use your headphones. But then we know that when they use their headphones, not all headphones have microphones, right? So they use their headphones, but microphones are not necessarily off. How many times in a classroom have we actually said, "Speak up, please, I can't hear you"? Most teachers prefer to say, "Shh, softer, not so loud." Whereas here in an online class, we often say, "Could you speak up? I can't hear you. Get closer to the mic, please." And this is the teacher equivalent. The last one is a teacher equivalent of, "I can't go to the other side," meaning I haven't brought my book. Usually when students say that in a face-to-face classroom, most teachers say, "Well, then you'll have to do without it. Or go to the back of the class. Don't disturb everybody else." Some of us might say, "Well, share the book, that's only for today. You need to remember to bring your book tomorrow." And yet, online, this is something we've learned to say. "Well, if you can't go to the other side, follow on this side, I will stream it here." So even if you can't participate, we'll make sure that you are with the class. We've learned to be more inclusive and more forgiving when students don't have the wherewithal, when we do it on site, online, which is problematic, but we've learned a different way of looking at a problem. We may not be aware of it, but we have become more forgiving. And the other way that we become more inclusive really is, can you write that word in the chat? We don't usually allow everybody in a classroom to share everything that they feel. We have 15 hands that go up in a face-to-face classroom. We pick on 3 people. We don't have time for more than that. In a 35-40-minute class, if we were to allow everybody to speak every time they wanted to, we wouldn't be able to do that. And yet, this is what we found. In an online setting, we're able to see that students need to participate. One way that we know that students are there, if we get them to. And so we say, please add that to the chat. So the chat function has become a matter of something that brings students into the classroom, brings students into contact, that makes sure that we know that they're engaged. And of course, we turn down and say, "I can't see you. Can you please turn your camera on?" And we do ask, and the password is another phrase. It's almost like it's a game that we're playing with our students. We need you to get to the quiz site, to the writing site, to the other puzzle sites that we use, and we give them a password so that we know that they're in there. We don't tell them, "Go to the site and play that game," even if it is possible. We do confine them to what we want them to look at. I want you to take a look at the photos that you see here. And these are the teachers, some of the teachers who were in the program with me at Frabel Academy in Chittagong, Bangladesh. And what you've seen as teacher language is what they have contributed, what they have said. So this is sheer data. I've changed the names around. I'm going to use about another 15 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes of time to talk about challenges we've met and overcome, challenges we are still in the process of working with, and challenges that we really may not actually ever really attempt. The major challenge, of course, that we've overcome to a large extent, is technology. Against technology. Most schools did not have technology in the classrooms. 15 years ago, those who were in teaching then may remember this huge push for language labs. And that would be the technology that would be used in the lab, in the school, in English teaching, where students would go, maybe we'd have individual listening stations, or we'd have a laptop, we'd have an overhead projector. In the past 5-8 years, some of the schools have invested in overhead projectors and laptops. We still don't allow students to use any kind of technology in the classroom unless they are in the lab, where we have our own computers, desktops. Teachers, therefore, have not really been used to using technology except for private purposes. In the past year, all of that has changed. And teachers who said, I don't really want to use that. And one of the major reasons why they didn't want to use technology was, oh my God, if it breaks down, the principal will ask me, what did you do to that? And I'll have the tech teacher, IT teacher coming to say, no, ma'am, that's not what you should have done. And I don't really want to deal with that. Many schools now have given teachers laptops, have given mobile phones, and have provided them bands enough to record, come to school and record, or record at home, come to school and use the Wi-Fi in school to work with. And the IT teams have understood that if things go wrong with laptops, that's a way of life. It's like us refurbishing the blackboard every term. And we've understood that that's a necessity. The other thing that really worked in Bangladesh, in the school, in Frabel Academy, was to have teachers watch recordings of their lessons. One of the major issues that always happens when we see ourselves in photographs is, oh my God, do I look like that? Is that what it looks? So to have teachers watch themselves, and not merely when they are teaching, but to go back and see, this is what your face looks like. This is how your nose wrinkles up. This is how welcoming you look, or how angry you look, or how upset you look, and how worried you look. Now, what can you do? And to have them go practice faces has really worked. The second thing, of course, is apart from providing teachers with laptops, which has made life easier for them, teachers have also learned to multitask on a laptop. We've learned as teachers to use audio and video streams. We had IT in classrooms, and most of the time we used them to access YouTube videos. We played them at the beginning of the class. We played them in the middle of the class. We played 3 to 4 minute videos. But we didn't produce the videos. And now we've learned to do that. The other thing I found with the school in Bangladesh that directly is to do with teaching online and getting comfortable with technology is peer sharing. Teachers across both vertically and horizontally have been able to communicate with each other, are willing to communicate with each other. Sharing lesson plans, sharing worksheets is less onerous, therefore. They don't have to go out and get something printed out. And then the other teacher doesn't have to go and get it copied. It's a click of a button for both of them. And they found it much easier to share materials. So that's one way that teaching online has been a huge benefit to the teachers. The second benefit is having seen themselves online and having watched each other teach and having shared recordings with each other, they feel much more comfortable talking to each other about their classes. One of the teachers, in fact, said her husband is complaining that she talks to a peer teacher a lot more than she does to him. And that is something, and they've got more interested in sharing with each other, not only about the student and the talk that we find in the staff room, but in media res, before they go into a classroom, or checking out of a classroom with 2 seconds to send a question using, with WhatsApp or the chat, sending a question or a query or a comment to say, well, come and see this, or what did we say we do about? So this has happened in the process of teaching, not merely pre or post the class. And that's been a wonderful way of making ourselves check ourselves. What are we actually doing? What am I doing now? And that's something when we talk about in-process reflection, that has been happening, which doesn't happen in a classroom because we don't have somebody else in the classroom. I'd like you to take a minute, 10 seconds to look at the picture, because this is something that we've been doing. We've all been pulling together. And that is why challenges have been met and overcome. Because schools have come together to recognize it's not just my classroom. Don't tell me what to do in my classroom has changed to what do we do as a school when students have issues? Because this is something that we recognize happens across the board. But apart from that, we've come together on a curriculum. As I said, we've shared aids, but it has also meant that we bring in more visual aids. We found that with teaching online, the internet really can be a friend. It can serve us very well. We've learned how to search for pictures, download them, and put them up. And it's much less onerous than searching for pictures, downloading them, printing them off, copying them. And we know how difficult it is to get things copied in a school. Sheer numbers. The second thing that I found was really teaching vocabulary. That's taken precedence over teaching grammar in many instances, where we've recognized the role that vocabulary plays in grammar. That it's not sufficient just to talk about nouns and adjectives, but that there are different ways of teaching those nouns and adjectives that will help us look at what grammar is. And the last one has been the most interesting about curriculum, because this has been a different way of looking at what we are actually teaching. And this has to do with writing. Most teachers, when we correct any written work, our red pen circles spellings invariably. Now we've learned to ask our students to check their own spellings. So we've thought about teaching spelling versus using the spell check. So we've learned unconsciously almost, without really meaning to, but we've learned to make students more responsible for their learning in a very significant way to teachers teaching English in India. And that struck me forcefully when I got a student writing back and I had no red marks under the spellings. They were wrong spellings then. Students they'd spell checked, but of course we know that they don't always get the right word in there. But the teacher had passed it over because she saw what had happened and she'd noted how to work with it, which is a very different way of giving back a page which is bleeding red because of the spelling errors. Pedagogy's changed. We now look to visual and auditory learners in a very different way. We recognize that visual learners are not just looking at a board. One of the things that the teachers in Bangladesh began to do was to focus attention on the illustration in the book, to begin teaching with the illustration, especially when they recognize the illustration did have a very close connection to the text. In some cases, it may not work, but in most cases, usually they would use the illustration to make it look colorful, and that's what they thought the purpose was. But looking at it online, they recognized what they could use it for, because they started looking at visual learners with more care. And of course, they expanded enormously their whole range of digital strategies. Graphic organizers, they learned how to look at and use the Microsoft Word and how to go to looking for graphic organizers, how to look at the charts, how to look at the icons, and how to use all of that in preparing their own, not just to make their slides look pretty, but to make it meaningfully interesting. Challenges in progress. The question, of course, is when are all of us going back into our classrooms? And many teachers, most teachers are looking forward to that. Much as we may have got used to technology, there are many things that happen in an F2F classroom that haven't been able to translate into a technology-based virtual classroom. But how do we actually use technology now in a hybrid model, in a face-to-face classroom? How much technology are we going to allow our students to bring into the classrooms? How are we going to handle that? Students in the past year, let's forget, have got used to learning using technology. So for them to go back and for us to say, now put all of that away, the internet doesn't exist for you, it only exists for me and for you in the classroom, that isn't going to work anymore. Because students are going to bring the internet in the classroom and say, ma'am, this is what I saw last night. This is what I was doing. This is a site. And we can't afford to let go of what we know can be a really teaching model that works in many ways. We haven't worked out how to do that yet. But we will. When we get back in, we need to think about that. So as we're thinking about going back into the classroom, which I don't know when it'll happen, but it will happen, we need to start having conversations about how do we get teachers and how do we get schools comfortable with that. One of the things that we've not really worked on yet, but I think we're starting to look at, is paralinguistic features of voice. The tone that we use, the volume that we use. How do we actually talk on a microphone? As teachers, we are used to raising our voice, raising our pitch. That's how we were heard. So when this began, a lot of teachers did that. When they needed to call attention to somebody, it was, it immediately went up by 3 decibels. And that didn't sit well with students. So So as teachers, we need to learn how to use our voices. How many of us have had classes on that in the past year? How many of us had workshops that teach us how to talk using a microphone? Not really. I'd really like to know at the end of it if you've had a workshop on voice, and if so, what you got out of that. I only know of one workshop on voice that was conducted, and not for teachers. I encourage teachers to go to that, but it was not meant for teachers. It was meant for musicians, actually, which talked about tone and volume and how to preserve your voice. We've been able to teach certain genres more easily than others. In a face-to-face classroom, and doing plays, when doing drama, we have students read aloud. We have students come up. We have students by the third iteration actually do the play. And that's what plays are meant to do, right? That's been problematic. We can put them into a breakout room and say, well, take parts and read. So that has been a good way of using a breakout room, where in a class of 20 or 30 or 40, we've had 6 to 8 breakout rooms, and all students in those 5-10 minutes of the class have been reading and have been participating. But much of the other aspects of teaching plays, whether it be a scenery, setting, music, movements, blocking movements. And when we teach plays, it's not just the word. We're going beyond the word into ourselves, into extending an imagination. Some teachers have managed to do that by asking students to create the setting. And that's appealed to the visual learners. So let's have the setting, draw a picture of the setting. And that's worked. But it's not always been possible to do that. Creating visually appealing material, that has been a problem, because for some teachers, using a slideshow, it took them a few months to get into doing that. There were workshops initially. I think all teachers went through that. How to use Word, how to use PowerPoints. But when we give feedback, for instance, when we give student feedback, we're used to underlining and circling, which is all that we used. We forgot that we could use emoticons, that we can use icons, that we can use different colors, and that those can tell different stories to our students. So making even our feedback visually appealing, so that students don't just throw it away, which is what they usually do with feedback, but they come back to see what the page looks like and what kind of emoticon or icon you've used. We've also we are learning how to have students give things to us, not just in words, but in pictures. How do they tell the story? How do they respond to us visually with illustrations? We've learned how to put students into breakout rooms. We've learned how to give them time-bound activities. We've said 3 minutes, I want you to do this, and then they come back into the main room. But we're learning how students need to interact with each other when they are left alone, when they know they don't have adult supervision. There are 8 breakout rooms. We can't be in them all the time. We're learning how students need to be independent learners when they're given challenging activities, and how that can actually be used to motivate and maintain student interest. That the student interest doesn't have to come from us. We're not the only ones that keep them engaged. They can keep each other engaged. That is something we're still learning, how to manage student learning and the different ways that are available to us to manage that kind of student learning. I am kind of running past time. Challenges that may never be addressed. I don't know that we've really talked about the difference in tech use between primary and the middle secondary, younger students and older students. Whether we've talked about the goals of teaching online versus face-to-face, and that has to do with the hidden curriculum. We talk about the values we teach when in a face-to-face class, and the values are invariably unstated, unspoken, unspecified, but we know what they are. They're cultural, they're behavioral. We don't know how and what the values of the hidden curriculum are. The major thing that we've not done with the online is really work with kinesthetic learners. People who learn by doing things. We just haven't looked at that. We haven't learned how to do that for the most part. I'm probably going to stop there and get back to questions that you may have. And if you will unmute yourself and maybe ask me a question.
Yes, now we can start the question and answer session. And if there are any questions, you can write in the chat box or some. Or
I have some comments here, which is very nice. I'm going to scroll up and see whether there are any.
No, so far there is
Maya
no.
Menon says, range of skills that teachers need to have is exploded, which is absolutely true. Okay, Guru says mostly comments so far. And the comments are probably interesting. I need to go back and check them out. Sorry, I lost Padmashree's comment. If we don't evolve models which help children engage, we as teachers fail. True. The question then is, how do we evolve these models? The way the models used to evolve may not be necessarily applicable to how models need to evolve online, for the online site. So how do we do that? We are curious to know methods for metacognitive processes in online teaching for a learner. That's a good question. We have about 20 years of research on and how students learn online. And we do know, for instance, visuals work really well, that we need to have students do, not merely be passive listeners, that we need to have activities for them to do. We need to have them look at what they need to do and then do it. It sounds like squares in Nicholas Nickleby. Now that you've learned it, go ahead and do it. But that's really what works. So for many of us who are used to teacher talk, we need to go back and see how we need to bring that teacher talk down. That's the first thing I think we need to know about metacognitive process. That teacher talk doesn't work. We know that, but how do we stop that? So getting teachers to go look at and really do an analysis of how much they talk would help. What is a kinesthetic learner? Kinesthetic learner is somebody who does. For instance, if you were to have a writing activity, which says essentially, create a poster, right? Making a poster using glue, cutting out bits of paper, drawing things on it is very different from doing a poster which is digital. Now, even if we use the draw function on the whiteboard, it doesn't have the same effect on the brain and on the kinesthetic learner as does physically cutting things up. So it's really learning by doing. It's using your hands, it's using your, not just your eyes, but it comes with this. This is what we need to use. It is moving, using our limbs. It's getting people to get up and move. Right?
Excuse me, ma'am.
My professor has made a comment and I need to read that out to you. You've been able to look at the various challenges that teachers are faced with today. You've also suggested ways of overcoming most of these challenges. I congratulate you for these are quite pragmatic. But one challenge is a reduced outreach in a face-to-face class, yes. How do we overcome this, especially in countries like India and Bangladesh? I think we have this question of outreach in both face-to-face and online. I agree with you, Professor Mohan Raj. I think it's a very difficult issue, and that's one of the issues I don't think we ever will really look at, because once we go into a classroom, we look at getting students back in and say, oh, we've done the outreach. We have 105% attendance. Physical attendance, yes, and we'll go back to what we used to have 2 years ago. But I think what we need to do, I was just reading yesterday, Reliance has been let me put it the other way. Silicon Valley has invested very much in Reliance to produce Geo that will then provide the outreach. And the report said Geo's failed with that. So if Reliance has not been able to provide outreach and make all of us get into the digital age, we recognize it's going to be difficult. They've tried and they've failed. But that doesn't mean you stop trying. We probably need to have, for instance, schools need to have a way of bringing technology into the classroom a lot more than we have done so far. We need to have maybe more community, and that's something which has been tried, where communities have come together in villages. Communities have come together in groups of 15, 20 students gather together, and they watch videos. And this is as an after-school program. We need to remember that learning doesn't happen only in the classroom, that learning happens outside of. Maybe that's what the outreach should be. Maybe we need to fund a lot more of after-school programs that bring students into the online. Maybe that's what, because it has been fairly successful. There are a couple of, there are a couple of organizations in Delhi that I personally know of that have done a really good job during this COVID time to be able to do that. We have a raised hand. Would you please go ahead? Samina Tabassum.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. Thank you, ma'am, for sharing your meaningful
Would you like to talk?
Yes. Am I audible, ma'am? Am I audible?
Okay.
Yes. Go ahead.
Yes, Samina madam, you are audible.
Yes,
I'm
yes.
not able to hear
Okay.
you.
Okay. Hema, ma'am, can you hear me?
Yeah, in an online class, it's difficult to engage students in pair or group work in such cases. Breakout rooms.
I fear ma'am is not.
I think in
able to hear me.
every 30-minute class, we need to have at least 2 breakout sessions of between 3 to 5 minutes each. Maybe a breakout room of 1 minute where you say, go look at this and come back with one comment. You give them a reading passage, have them do a jigsaw reading in breakout rooms, and then come back with what they have. Breakout rooms are essential. Yes, the introverted students have been benefited enormously by the online learning, and that is true. How do we preserve that? I don't know. In a face-to-face class, I guess we just need to be more conscious that we have students who are introverted and not expect everybody to be vocally participative. Maybe we need to provide them space to say, well, go home and do this and send it back to me by 7 o'clock this evening. Go home and record your response to this and send it back to me. So that we keep ourselves open up a blog, open up a class blog, have them post regularly on the blog. Let them share it in their own time. We need to have applications that support breakout rooms. Don't use applications that don't. Believe me, IT is so interested in being used, they'll come back with your breakout rooms. They'll make it possible. Jani, children are learning more hidden curriculum through online, offline during the pandemic, as there is no fear of examination. Yes. That is one of the major learnings that we need to have. If CBSE can cancel exams, we damn well can. We don't need to have tests every week when we go back into a face-to-face. I hope we keep that in mind. I know that there's somebody who's doing something on assessment in one of the panels, and I'm hoping that we will talk about that. Are we running out of time, Ravi?
Am I audible, Hema ma'am?
I think
Hema ma'am, can you hear me?
Ranjani, you've raised your hand and I hope you can talk.
I have just one or two questions more, ma'am. Just one or two questions and then, hello?
Pooja, I'm not quite sure what's happening with the raised hands, that they can't talk, that I can't hear them.
One or two questions, so we can go ahead with one or two.
Let's cancel exams. Assessment can be done otherwise. Yeah, I have no problems with that. Continue. Yeah. Maybe it's time to bring back CCE and use technology for CCE. We need to think through this very carefully. But maybe that's why we need to go with this. Yeah, I can't hear you, Ravi, when you talk.
Yeah, madam, can you hear me? Madam, can you hear me? Hema, madam? Hitesh here.
I think ma'am can't hear some of us.
Schools have constrained you, then you need to go back and see what you absolutely must do to get the breakout rooms. I mean, do that. Is there any way to keep the lesson learner focused without involving them in pair or group work? Give them time out. Really, give them time out. Say, shut down your microphone and your camera for 2 minutes, 30 seconds, and then switch on your camera for another 30 seconds and come back with that. Okay. I've lost that list of things that came from somebody here.
Yes, Samina has posted in the chat box.
Madam, actually,
there's a list of questions which I can't see anymore.
Yeah, I have posted some questions that are not answered. Can you see this? All right. There are 4 questions are there from participants here, Regmi and Ishita.
I'm sorry, I've lost the list.
Yeah, I have posted it once again.
Okay. Are we done now? Oh, Samina's got a comment. Is your teacher authority being challenged? Oh, yeah. I think what we need to understand, Samina, is that students, the online, the virtual setting does provide for us to be more egalitarian. That's one of the things we teach in a classroom. You know, one of the hidden curriculum aspects is discipline and authority. That is lost in an online setting. And I think what we need to understand is that discipline, that sense of authority that we have in an F2S classroom doesn't always work. It may not even be necessary. So what we talk of as challenging us may be the student needing to assert what they have learned. That's one way of looking at it. The second, I think, is when the student is being nasty and obstreperous. When they're being nasty and obstreperous to their peers is also when we need to say, no, you can't behave like that. That's not nice. It's not you're challenging me and you're challenging my authority as much as what is the validity of what you're saying? Can you say that more nicely? And that part of the problem, of course, is that that's how we talk to children. And that's how they find they can talk to us now. So that's why I brought up the issue of language. What is the language that we actually use in the classroom and online to talk to our students? And that is a language they're giving back to us now. Okay? Yes, it is more student-centered. It also means a loss of control for us, but maybe we can see it as a process of us redefining how we communicate with our students. Not necessarily that we have to cede a sense of who we are, as much as understand who they can be. Digital literacy skills, okay. I'm glad that was worthwhile, Samina. Thanks. We have moved technology into more self-evident ways and perhaps even automatically, where teachers have used it as a medium to support their curriculum. Would like to hear your perspective on how do we reach children who may not have that level of, the MLLs we're talking about. Professor Subramaniam was on a session with Azim Premji. Well, it was another session yesterday talking about curriculum, talking about MLLs, minimum levels of learning. And they're not always the best thing to do. I think the online we also need to think about what students are actually learning. We talk about individualizing learning. We talk about that a lot, and we don't. So understanding incidental learning, for instance, and that is something that all students do online, and we should be able to see much more clearly. We tell students, well, go search for these images. There is a lot of incidental learning that happens. We say, well, go look for images of the Buddha. They see not just the Buddha, but they see different images that relate to Buddhism and to other religions. So for them to come back and talk about that, and for us to acknowledge that there has been incidental learning is important. So that is an aspect we need to think a little more about. We presume in an F2F classroom that there is no incidental learning because there is only the textbook and only what we say. And that is all that we think they learn. That's not true in an online setting. Yeah, we're done. Thank you, Pooja. Thank you everyone for listening in for a much longer talk than I presumed I would have time for. So thank you.
Thank you, Hema ma'am. There are a lot of questions from everybody, and as we are running short of time, sorry for that, asking you to kind of stop in between. Yeah. So thank you for all your keen observation that you have shared, and of the challenges that we have faced and we have met as well. Now I request my colleague, Dr. Raviraj sir, to thank the plenary speaker.
Yeah.
Sir.
Thank you, Pooja. It was fabulous, Dr. Hema Ramnathan. Thank you so much for making such an engaging presentation. I think all of us should look at her bio, the way she has written her short biography. Like, it begins like this. Uzma Madam has already introduced her in the morning. So she says that she believes, Hema Ramnathan says, she believes that education is a public discipline, teaching is a social act, and research in education should mirror these concepts. And then she goes on talking about her experience of training teachers, working in many different countries. And today she has shared lots of insights, not just her experiences of teacher education, her experiences of interacting with teachers and experts in different fields. I think it was wonderful listening to you. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation. We would really love to continue the discussion. I think she'll be available on the same platform over these 2 days. So those of you who are interested can chat, can text her. So thank you. And formally, I would like to thank our Commissioner for School Education, V. Ambu Kumar, IAS. We met him day before yesterday to invite him to the conference. He has sent his best wishes. I'm just going to read out our Commissioner's message, which is addressed to the Director, Regional Institute of English, South India, Bengaluru. Dear Sir, you have invited me to the International Conference on English Language Teaching during pandemic times. I'm grateful for the invitation, and I convey my apologies for not being able to attend the conference. At the same time, I convey my best wishes to the participants and the Institute for the success of the program. So we are very grateful to our Commissioner for showing interest and for encouraging all of us. We're also thankful to the Principal Secretary of Primary and Secondary Education of all the South Indian states. And a special thanks to our Director, Sri Basavaraj Gavanahalli, who could make it address all of us and inaugurate this 2-day international event. I am also grateful to all the plenary speakers, plenary, including Dr. S.P. Dhanavel, who will be interacting with us tomorrow. And thanks to all the paper presenters, all the delegates. We have more than 170 participants attending this event here, and there are more than 120 people listening on YouTube. I'm very happy that all of you have proven your digital literacy. There was absolutely no disturbance during the inauguration, during the plenary. Great that you're able to mute your microphone, turn off the camera, and listen to Dr. Hema Ramnathan's presentation and engage in a very meaningful discussion. So thank you for showing such high discipline, and I hope we'll follow the etiquette throughout the conference. So with that, thank you everybody, and hope you will all enjoy the sessions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ravi sir. Thank you. So we have a panel discussion would start at around another 20 minutes of time. So till the other panelists join, maybe we could just take a short break so that the members of the panelists can join. Yes.
Pooja Madam, you wanted to make some announcements for the chairpersons for the subsequent sessions in terms of timekeeping, etc. Would you like to make them?
Right. That probably we can do it later, I guess. So because otherwise they might forget. Yeah. So maybe as the panelists, those who are here, can start joining. Yeah, there is
Pooja, sorry to disturb you.
Right.
Yes, Pooja, I think it's better you make an announcement now for those people who are already present. So that at 12:20, whenever you start, regarding moving to the rooms, no? As Mr.
Now we have
pointed out.
We have panel discussion now.
Panel will continue here only. But I think
okay, the main room.
That we have panel session.
the panel session is after the panel.
Yeah.
Fine.
Panelists.
Yeah. Then, as you said, they may forget. That's right.
The panelists for the day, they can probably, if they are here, and if the PPTs have to be uploaded, maybe that could be kept ready. Dr. Ashley, Mr. Noshad Kabir, Mr. Muhammad Qasim, and Feruza, Ms. Feruza Benson, Mr. Benson, and Ashmira, and our moderator, Padmini Madam. The rest of us can take a slight break till they join. We'll start the panel discussion at around 12:20, as per the schedule. I request everybody to mute your videos and the cameras except the panelist members. Thank you.
Hello, Dr. Pooja.
Sir. Yeah, thank you.
Shall we? Yeah, shall we continue here? I mean,
yes, yes.
in this room.
Right. All the
Okay.
panel discussions will be done here, day 1 and day 2 both. The plenary and the panel discussions, yes, it will be
in the main room, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, in the main room.
Okay.
Then we will disperse after the panel discussion. We'll disperse to the other rooms. Right. Thank you.
Okay. So then we can continue to be logged in here.
Right. Yes. Yes.
Okay. Thank
So
you. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to confirm if our panelists are here. Mr. Noshad is here. Feruza, could you just unmute and let me know that you're there?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm.
Thank you. Mr. Benson? Benson? Dr. Ashley? Benson, I can see you there.
Yes, yes, I'm
You're
there.
able to, yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Next, Asmira?
Yes,
Asmira,
I'm here. Yes.
Great.
Yes,
Thank
I'm
you.
here.
And Dr. Ashley?
Okay. So, Dr. Pooja, I will be back in 10 minutes, right? I'm logged in here, but I will be away for a while. Yeah. Thank you.
Another
Thank you.
10 minutes will join. Yes. And then we have Dr. Ashley? Padmini ma'am? We had some issue with the chat box. Rakesh, yeah, we'll just take a little while because our foreign speakers are finding little difficulties with the links. We'll just take a break.
Anytime listening akan dia man. Mas ne diyecek? Betul ini. Berarti ben sen bana ya. Ben hoca ben sen gel anlamını ya. Onu eskiden ne olsun geldi.
हेलो वर्क लेयर में
Okay, students, yeah.
Dr. Ashley, have you been able to join?
Hello, yes, I'm here.
Thank you.
I joined.
Thank you. Yes, yes.
Thank
Just
you.
waiting for the moderator to join. Yes.
All
We'll
right.
start
then.
another 5 to 10 minutes. Thank you.
See you in 10 then.
Yes. We'll wait for another 5 minutes. There's a bit of connectivity issue for our one of the speakers.
Dr. Puja, I'm here.
Yes, thank you. Dr. Ashley?
I'm here as well.
All
Hi.
right. Yes. Okay. Yes. Just 5 minutes more.
Okay.
Puja, I think she has joined. Padmini madam has joined. Oh,
Padmini ma'am?
I think she has gone off. I think she has.
There's a little bit of connectivity issues.
Yes, she came twice.
Mhm.
Yes, Padmini madam is there. Padmini madam, can you hear me?
Looks like she's got disconnected again, sir. She's trying.
I saw her 4 times.
No, she's again. Yeah, she's trying again.
Yes, yes, yes. Again gone.
Yeah, in case there are challenges for her on connectivity grounds, I think a plan B may be required.
For you not being able to present, but I think what you said to us has given us a really nice picture of the challenges that you are facing in Kenya and also the ways in which you are trying to address the issue. So thank you, Benson, and we will come back to you a little later. We move on to our fourth presenter now, our fourth panelist, who is Azmera. Azmera, are you here?
Yes, hello.
Okay. Azmera, we move to you now. Azmera Batukan from the Philippines. And Azmera, do you have a presentation, Azmera?
No, I don't have a presentation.
Okay.
Just
present. All right. So if you could just switch your video on, and we would love to hear what you have to share with us. Thank you.
All right. Can you see me? No, not yet. There, can you see me?
I can't see you yet, but it will be my phone. Can others see Azmera?
I can't see you.
No, we can't see her. All right, let me switch to my phone because I think my laptop is not good when it comes connect.
Yeah, there will be a video icon on the bottom of your screen, the rightmost icon, that's a video icon.
All right.
If you click it, your video should come on. There's also a background in at your place. I think we are hearing a background sound. I think maybe you're playing the live YouTube stream on. You can mute that or close it.
Azmera, are you with us? I think Azmera is trying to join from her phone.
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, but we can't see you yet. So if you have a problem using your video, that's okay. If you would rather talk to us using your audio, even that is all right.
Right. Is it okay if I don't use my audio? I mean my
video. Yes, sure. Maybe at some point later, if you can work it out, we would love to have you see you. But yes, please do go ahead with your presentation now. I mean your oral presentation.
All right, so I should not go with my video. I guess it's not working. But can you hear me?
We can hear you very clearly. Please go ahead.
Very clearly.
All right. So, hello, pleasant afternoon to everyone. It's my pleasure to be part of this international conference about this English language teaching during pandemic times and, of course, how we grapple with it with this new normal. And thank you. Before I forget, I would like to thank all the organizers from this conference, from the Regional Institute of English in India, being Bengaluru, and IT for Change in Bengaluru. I hope I pronounced it right. So, yes, I am an English teacher here in the Philippines, almost 10 years. I'm just new. 2 years in a private higher institution and 8 years until now in a public high school here in the Philippines. So what I will be talking is about how English language teaching and learning are recreated in this time of pandemic. Actually, it's not really recreated, but the right term there is remodeled, right? But before that, let me give you first a sense of how Philippine education looks like before the pandemic hit the Philippines. So before it hit the Philippines, it was not really seriously taken serious by our government until late March. So at that time, in March, we were preparing for the end of our school year because we started our school from June and we ended sometime in March. So we were preparing. We have the final exams. We're at its climax at that time because our school year usually ends in March. Before we could do that, just probably like in country or in other countries, our government decided to have a nationwide lockdown to prevent the virus spreading. Everything went hanging. And now, because of what happened, we didn't have the proper graduation ceremony like we used to. Our students did not experience graduation. Some of them have had their graduation virtually. Some of them are still pending for the school year to 2019 and 2020. There were no summer classes also, and supposedly we'll start our school in June, but it was postponed in October for us to prepare, because you see there is on how child faces, and I think all of us is in this kind of situation where we were shocked, as what Miss who was that speaker, Firuza, said, that it's not about the virus that we were shocked, but we were shocked on how we can teach our students without facing them. So what we did was, we cannot let education die because of the pandemic. So how is the English language created in this type of pandemic? Most probably, like you would say online teaching and all of that. But in the Philippines, we decided, or our Department of Education adapted four modalities. So actually, it's not only the English language, but the whole learning process itself that were recreated. We adapted different modalities on how we can continue education in the new normal. So first, we have the face-to-face mode, which is not encouraged and only possible if the area is not in the high risk of transmission of virus identified. Second is the distant learning modality. I think this is where everyone can agree that the distant learning modality is the very mainstream modality that everyone uses. So in our distant learning modality, we have four types of this distant learning modality, where the learning takes place between the teacher and the learners who are geographically remote from each other during instruction. So we are not having a face-to-face. So it has four types. First is the modular distance learning, which is the common one that we use here in the Philippines. Second is the online distance learning, which some of you identified that the one that you are using. Also the TV and radio-based instruction, which also Mr. Benson said that they use. And we have the homeschooling and blended learning. So in the Philippines, although we are using the online distance learning, we are more like using the blended type of learning, where we use the modules. So every teacher or every division created their own modules. It's like a learning material, self-learning materials that we have to give to our students. We will photocopy it, and then we will give each to our students so that they can study that modules at their home. And then we are aiding that online teaching. Because of full introduction, we are not really very far from online teaching. The online teaching is only very prevalent in the urban areas where internet connection is very very strong. But in our case, we use messengers, WhatsApp, and WhatsApp is not really that used here. Probably it's the messengers. So we use the online teaching for aid. We do not use it as a primary platform for learning, but our primary platform is the modules. And also we use also the TV radio-based instruction also as an aid to our learners. And because English language is the primary language we use in academia here in the Philippines, in all other government transactions, so it is very important to teach it aside, of course, from the global language. As they said, it is not just a foreign language now, but a language for communication. So we cannot just say that that's a foreign language, no, because now it is like a mandatory for us to learn the English language to achieve the global communication. And in the Philippines, we have our ways of teaching it depending on the context of the learners. It doesn't mean that in some region they teach English that way. It doesn't mean that we have to teach it also that way, because we have to find the context. We have to teach it in the context of our learners. But of course, the pandemic has caused it to be recreated in a way new to us. So what we did is that our curriculum, we used our very compact curriculum. We only get the most essential learning competencies in our curriculum. We call it the MELC, the most essential learning competencies. And then we maintain that in our curriculum to be shortened. So from a very long curriculum, it is now shortened because what we are now focusing is the most essential learning competencies. And blended learning is mostly used because we maximize the use of available resources in our area. And we use also the aid set, although some areas do not have access to it. But I think it is also a call to everyone that technology, no matter how we want it or how we do not want it, time will come that we need to learn how to use it. And it is very important that we learn how to use it properly, especially that we are teachers. And it doesn't mean that because we know how to do it, we cannot expect our learners from learning it the way we used to do it. So we have to teach them the proper way, especially in this time of pandemic, and especially that now students are relying on social media, relying on internet. It's very important that when we use technology as aid or even the main platform for teaching, not only English but any other subjects, we have to train to teach them how to use it properly. I think that's all that I can share with you about our practices here in the Philippines, most probably in our area.
Thank you. Aspera, this was again a very interesting and informative presentation. I'm glad that we are getting to hear different kinds of initiatives taken by countries and by teachers to respond to the challenges of the pandemic. So thank you for telling us so much about what is happening in the Philippines. We will come back to you a little later, Aspera. And we would now like to move on to our next panelist, who is Mia Muhammad Naushad Kabir from Bangladesh. Dr. Kabir, you have a presentation. You might want to start presenting now, or if you prefer to speak to us directly, please do switch on your video as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Padmini Borwa. I also would like to thank you for introducing me with little correction. I'm not the Vice President of Belta now. My tenure was over on the 19th of this month.
Okay.
So,
okay, that was on your bio.
Yeah, when I sent, much before. Yeah, fine.
No.
So, good afternoon, namaste, and salam from Dhaka. I would like to start with presenting a brief picture on the pandemic scenario that happened in the educational setting of Bangladesh at first, and then I will directly try to address the two questions asked to me. So, our country was officially hit by pandemic on 17th of March 2020, and 17th March onwards, all the educational institutes were shut down. I basically teach at a public university, that is the leading university in Bangladesh, Dhaka University, but all the institutes were shut down on the same day, and for almost around 1 month, we didn't know what to do. We, with the teachers, the policymakers, and the people at the government level, and there was no instructions. But gradually, private universities in our country, there are around 107 private universities in Bangladesh. So they took the lead and they started all these academic processes online. Public universities, which are around 49 in the country, took a little more time, so around 3 months to come to a decision. And then they also started teaching online. The primary, secondary, and higher secondary institutes are still closed, but classes are being offered using a television, which Benson mentioned and which Asla also mentioned. So there are certain changes in the entire education program, like, for example, the syllabus was reduced. I think these things are common across the globe, which Dr. Hema Ramnathan also mentioned. So reduced syllabus, reduced class hours, and also reduced time for assessment, reduced marks for assessment. So it was a kind of compromise in almost every aspect of education, but the whole idea is to keep the process going. And initially there was another problem, that is, many of us, unlike the situation in the USA, many of us were not digitally educated, and we didn't know anything about LMS and other digital platforms, which by this time we are very comfortable with. We are using them. So some people had technophobia, some people had a kind of hesitation to use, and the most important thing was the mindset. Many people didn't believe, many teachers didn't believe that classes can be taken online. But for the last 15, 16 months, we have experienced that yes, we are taking classes online, and we are also conducting exams. And we are now, by this time, we are quite habituated, and we are also updating ourselves every other day. So now, if I go to the question number 1 that was asked to me, whether this kind of paradigm shift in educational practices are temporary or it's going to be a new normal. And I believe that, I think I have every reason to believe that the pandemic emergent pedagogical practices are going to be the new normal for several reasons. So, for example, we came to know for the first time that pedagogy can happen beyond the 4 walls academically, and also around 24/7 hours. So it is not time bound, and it is not place bound. So we have infinite opportunities to disseminate education. Then I would like to also mention the shift in the perception. So, I mean, once upon a time, we used to scold students if we saw them using mobile phones in the classrooms. But as all of us are now aware, the entire education system is taking place in mobile phones, laptops, and other electronic gadgets. So we have come to realize that the problem is not with the gadgets, but perhaps with its users and the users. I would also like to mention the potentialities or the pedagogical potentialities of everything that we have been doing online, including Facebooking, Twittering, Instagramming, WhatsApping, Zooming, and whatnot. Now, we have been doing all these things, but there was hardly any connection between our online practices and educational practices. But during this pandemic, the connection has been very strongly made. And finally, I would also like to draw your attention to the fact that there has been a new dimension added to the existing relationships between the different stakeholders of education. Once upon a time, we didn't, many of us didn't prefer adding students to their social networking sites, but now we have added our students, parents, our colleagues, and we are sharing the same space because we need to connect to each other. We need to communicate to each other for our educational and professional necessity. So I think that all these paradigm shifts are going to stay even if when the pandemic is over, because these new skills are offering us new opportunities. Now I would like to go to the next question, the positive learning. And the first thing that I would like to mention is, we are digitally updated every day. For example, for successfully attending this conference, I had to install Telegram, and I also came to know about Big Blue Button, which I didn't know before. So every other day, some new apps are coming, and we are going to learn them. We also realized that these things were present there, but suddenly they became very important, and Dr. Hema also mentioned them. We understood the importance of voice, gesture, posture, audio-visual materials in a very different and a special way. We understood that, yes, classrooms, classmates, campuses, teachers and students, all of them are very important. I think the distance factor has made the proximity factor more significant than ever. So now, through this online modality, we can see, hear, and perhaps feel things also, but we miss touch and we miss smell to a large extent, and the ambience well, because we miss classrooms. I, as a teacher, miss my classroom. My students often inform me that they are missing the classroom. So we understand that learning can happen in any modality, but the modality that we have been using has more meaning that we could decipher, because that classroom, that setting is not present before us now. So in online modality, we are just trying to recreate that classroom ambience as authentically as possible, and our classes have become more multimodal than ever, including the use of pen, paper, digital boards, interactive boards, hard and soft objects. And these things have given birth to some newer challenges as well. For example, the lack of socialization by students, camera shyness or awareness, less privacy in our life. I think this online education has been more taxing for women because they are dealing with their household chores and at the same time taking classes online. More pressure on our eyes, neck, back, and other physical aspects. Many of the teachers are reluctant to go for recorded version of their classes. Sometimes it is found that the recorded classes or the clips from recorded classes are used for fun by different stakeholders. There are some trolls available on internet. However, we have seen the eco-friendly aspect of online teaching as well, because we have less traffic rush on the school hour on the streets, and we are not adding to the air and sound pollution as well. I would like to conclude by saying that online classes have been a kind of great equalizer in the sense that it kind of democratizes the power relation in the class. I mean, some students usually sit in the front, some are called backbenchers. Teachers are giving lectures on a podium. So seating arrangements are no more an issue. Anytime anyone can switch off or switch on their screen, they can write comments, they can raise their hands. So I think online classes has also given us the test of democratic practices in pedagogies. So it has given us presented us with new possibilities which we can continue to practice when the pandemic is over. We are also having synchronous and asynchronous classes and assessments. I don't think that these things are going to diminish when life gets back to normalcy. These are the skills we have developed after a lot of difficulty. That is all from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kabir. I think you just took away my whole thunder, because the things that you said, really resonated with me, and I think all of us, especially in India, would be able to completely relate to everything that you said, the challenges, the success stories, and the ways in which we have been responding to the whole new situation. So thank you so much for such an enlightening presentation and a succinct overview of how Bangladesh and also perhaps India is facing the pandemic challenges. So thank you so much. And we will come back to you. We would now be moving on to the last panelist. This is not the last thing that you're going to say, but for the time being, we move on to the responses of the last panelists to my 2 questions and their presentations. So we now have with us Mohammad Qasim Jami from Afghanistan. And if you have a presentation, you could now start that, or if you would prefer to speak to us, please do switch on your video. Thank you.
Hello everyone.
Hi, hello. We can hear you.
Great,
Hello
perfect. I would like to actually say hello to the world. And thank you so much for arranging this wonderful international conference and sharing your precious and priceless knowledge, information, experiences with us, not just with us, of course, but with the whole world here. And a special thanks actually go to the Regional Institute of English, South India, Bangalore, where I had the pleasure of visiting as officer for Afghanistan University Student Exchange Program in 2013. Since then, I am really a great fan of India. I love India. And thank you, IT for Change. Thank you, the organizing committee. Thank you all great speakers. Your speeches, knowledge, and information shared really inspired me. And I'm very happy to take a moment to thank you so much all, everyone. My name is Mohammed Qasim. I'm from Afghanistan. And, well, ready to jump into the topic, but I don't have a presentation. I would like to share simply my experience and the experience of colleagues in Afghanistan who actually share with me. And I hope you're okay with that. So the topic of my talk is about, of course, the challenges and solutions for Afghan English teachers and teaching English online in the light of COVID-19. So in the light of COVID-19 outbreak, teaching English has been dramatically challenging and changing its method from a traditional physical classes to online virtual classes, as we all actually experienced that. And that was not exceptional for Afghan English teachers in Afghanistan, right? So since the Afghan English teachers have been innovatively using asynchronous and synchronous instruction methods when they figured out how actually methods would help them in teaching their English courses online or for remote learning, and also for student engagement approaches. So I will be glad to share about how they innovatively actually make the best use of Zoom, Google Meet, Google Classroom, Google Doc, Telegram, WhatsApp, Messengers, we all are doing, and even Facebook. And so, as for the assessment tool, I will be also sharing with you the chat box here for everyone. The books, Void, Gizmos, and Google Form are the very useful assessment tools actually being used effectively. So for teaching, practicing, and assessment, focusing on our Afghan English teachers in Afghanistan, deal with those current situations. Of course, as the previous speaker said, we were not ready for it. And it was a big surprise for the whole world. And as soon as it happened, we immediately talked about how to continue education. Because the school can be closed, but education cannot be stopped. So we all learned about how to manage remote learning and how to go with at least hybrid learning, So, and then we learned about synchronous, about real-time teaching. That was very helpful for office hours. Like if I or my colleagues would actually wanted to conduct a sort of online office hours, we would go to synchronous, through the Zooms. And asynchronous, that was perfectly actually helpful in being very flexible for students, because the students could catch up with their assignments or studies almost any time given. So asynchronous has been a very helpful approach. And then, we actually came to come up to use some teaching tools and activities through Zoom. We know that how helpful Zoom is when it comes to creating or breaking out rooms, creating subgroups, scheduling it. I like the best part of scheduling it because, you schedule a particular session and everyone receives the link or the username and the passcode. And you can have, great number of participants, and I don't know, maybe up to 250 or official account. So in Afghanistan, they also actually learn about how to use Google Meet, Google Classroom, and inside the WhatsApp, we just talked about for Bluetooth videos, audio, text. And the good thing about share their thoughts on the topic. And for the listening exercises, podcasts are, of course, digital files. So we can, make the best use of YouTube. And I'm really great fan of YouTube. Like, I'm telling my students that when you have access to internet and you are really almost ready for everything, you would like to learn, YouTube, Google, and just go online and learn about tutorials out there, unlimited tutorials, so you can learn a skill, learn part of any language, whatever you want. So for watching learning exercises, even teachers here, they create their own videos, like lectures, PowerPoints with voiceover and also slide notes, and circulate them among their students or so. So the good thing about this challenge is that, we have seen that the students have become the creators of their own learning resources. Like, the students are actually learning about how to become more technologically, fluent or maybe expert or professional. At some point, I say, thanks to the COVID-19 pandemic, we learned how to, get connected together across the world, as this conference is going on now. We are in different time zones, and if these technologies either existed or not, we were not so much forced to use them. But now we get connected, we talk, we share knowledge, and every challenge creates an opportunity once we actually deal with it. So in teaching classrooms, through online platforms, sometimes students here actually become teachers, and they act as teachers. They're giving the role for teaching a class section. They develop their own topics and create their own content, and they present with PowerPoint, and they talk, and so they're very happy because this change of post-COVID-19, what you're talking about online teaching, has given individual students to learn at their own pace. And as one of our great speakers said, that this has been wonderfully helpful for introverted students. Like introverted students, they do love to study at home because, they like their own, time to be alone and focus on their studies. But again, it has been really equally effective for all learners and different learning styles. Through the online learning resources, the students actually are creating their own learning circles, groups, e-portfolios, and more. And we are, in our classrooms, we are creating more online discussion spots. As you know, there are really helpful MOOCs, like massive open online courses, where students can actually take some relevant short courses related to their studies, and they can benefit from. Another interesting thing to share actually is that the current crisis, as I indicated earlier, really created a learning opportunity. At some point, we just assigned students to tell us how will they use this experience, this situation that they are future carriers. What suggestions they actually want about the situation. This could be done in a debate class or a project. So, and this can actually go on for all the way. I know that the most challenging part would be about assistance, or how to effectively assist students' engagement and online classrooms. Whether their work will be authentic, or will the students do plagiarisms. But we actually can use two methods for learning behaviors. One I'm talking about is to observe or observational learning behaviors. Like we can assess students' engagement through their reading or viewing the video, just contributing to the class discussion, or the application learning behaviors by giving feedback or posting to the forum, or maybe replying back emails, taking online quizzes, and so on. of actually using probably, let me share it here. That is Google Form. We know that Google Form is a free online tool for, which allows you to create forms, surveys, quizzes, as well as collaboratively to edit and share information with students or with everyone. Yeah, Google Form, which is obvious. Okay, you probably don't need to have the link, but as you have the Google account, you can create it. So Google is really a good friend for students and learners. They can make the best use of the features available. So fortunately, yeah, we are learning about how to, use these. If I have 1 more minute time, I'm not sure about it, but please stop me.
Yeah, if you could wind up in another minute, we will have some time for interaction. Yes.
Sure. So we talk about these opportunities, and undoubtedly there were challenges. Unfortunately, again, we are struggling with internet accessibility. We are struggling with lack of, we are struggling with unstable electricity. And the adaptability to remote learning and teaching is like some teachers and students, they still need to have more training, more professional training, maybe more guidelines, and how to move from in-person classrooms to online classrooms. These are something we all actually are in the learning process. Thank you so much, and I will be adding more in the Q&A of this presentation. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for all these links that you provided in the chat box, and also sharing what you have been doing in Afghanistan to face the challenges of the new situation. I realize that we are running actually out of time. So instead of asking the rest of the questions that I had shared with the panelists, I think that all of you have actually answered the other questions during your presentations. So for the benefit of the audience, I would just like to read out the questions that you have already responded to. And I can see a few questions coming up in the chat box, and we will be addressing that shortly. So the other questions that I was meaning to pose to the panelists were, one was, have you felt alone and isolated in grappling with the COVID-produced pedagogical challenges, or have you had academic support from an institution, administrators, colleagues, mentors, students, parents, and other stakeholders during these times?
Right.
Do you see value in collaboration for online teaching and learning? Would you have a personal experience to share? I think you have already answered that, all of you. The other question that I had was, from the perspective of being a teacher and or a researcher, how successfully have you managed to complete your course syllabus? What advice, a tip, a strategy would you give to other teachers and researchers? Third question that I had was, do you feel that the present trend of online teaching and virtual interaction will make human contact redundant? Do you see any role for physical human interaction, empathy, bonding, and emotional support even after the pandemic is over? And I was meaning to ask this question to Kabir because his abstract is more about resilience and connections. If you do have some time, Kabir, if there are other people who want to know about this, maybe you would be the one to choose to respond. The final question that I had asked all of you was, what are some digital platforms and tools that you have successfully used for teaching and assessment and would recommend to our audience? And I'm so happy that you have actually, all of you, mentioned a variety of tools that you've all used, and the downside of that, as well as the upside of these different kinds of tools and strategies that are available for us, and some things that have come out of, grappling with the new circumstances, even though most of us didn't really have any kind of background with online and virtual teaching and learning tools before. So these were the questions, and I think my panelists today have already answered them very, very lucidly. But just to quickly also reflect on what the panelists have been saying, let me just mention some of the things and strategies and tools that our panelists have been sharing with us. survey that her university, she and her colleagues have been conducting, and that's a wonderful thing to do, actually researching how students feel and what they are facing and how to build tools and respond to the needs of the learners as well as the teachers. We heard from Asla about ways of checking students' authentic work, of using locking down browsers so that their attention is not diverted, and also the value of professional learning communities. Faruza mentioned using mini video lessons, especially for her grammar and writing classes. She spoke about read and think aloud tools and other remote collaboration tools. Maybe Faruza can give us some examples of that in the chat box, if not verbally. And you also talked about using a framework and planning ahead, and using not just internet-based tools, but also using text messages and other asynchronous devices to stay connected with learners and help them to learn. Benson mentioned the use of radio and TV broadcasting in Kenya, community radio especially, and also other social media tools such as WhatsApp, Google Meet, and Zoom, and the Edu TV channel. I'm only wondering whether this kind of engagement is one way or both ways. That might be a challenge when you have broadcast learning. Then it is unlikely that all learners will have access to the teacher synchronously. But then through WhatsApp and other tools, I suppose Kenya has been able to respond to learners' needs, teachers of Kenya. We then had Snera talking about 4 modalities. She mentioned how they're using modular learning. So I think the Philippines is responding to the situation in a slightly different way than other countries are. You have been focusing on more, sharing self-learning materials in modular forms with students, so that even without internet, they have an opportunity to learn at home. You mentioned TV, radio instruction, and basically homeschooling, which is something that I do not think many of us have been exploring. We have mostly been relying on online classes and synchronous lessons. Nashad, of course, talked about so many factors that have emerged out of the experience of learning online, learning and teaching online. The fact that learning is no longer place-bound, no longer time-bound, the whole idea of a teacher-fronted class, students sitting in the front row and responding, others sitting at the back and not getting an opportunity, all of that, how the process of online learning has democratized the entire learning situation. I would also like to add here how, at least in India, we really had a mistrust of social media tools, about the internet, about Google. We felt that our students, our children, were just wasting time being online. And now we realize that we have been forced to harness the same powers. You mentioned, Qasim, you mentioned YouTube and other platforms. And we really now see how we have, the generational gap in digital literacy is becoming reduced, because teachers have also risen to the occasion and have been exploring online resources as much as students who we had thought were actually the digital natives. We realize now even children need support with education and technology. Social media is something that they're good at, but education online is something that they need support with, and therefore we teachers still have a really important role to play in all of this. And Qasim, of course, mentioned Voxvote and other assessment tools. So I think today we've had a really wide variety of contextual realities, of ways of responding to the pandemic situation. I think we all agree that this is not a temporary situation, that it is likely that even if the pandemic goes away, we would not be getting off from the online platforms, and we would be using that in blended modes, like perhaps the Philippines is already doing, and we will be focusing on both online and asynchronous learning. So this was just in a nutshell the main ideas that I heard and I took away from all my panelists today. And so now we have about 15 minutes for panelists to respond to questions and answers. So if I can have somebody from the group present the questions, that would be really nice. I can also do that, but you know, the chat is moving quite fast. So if there is a specific question to a specific panelist, please do switch on your video. Some of you have been raising your hand, but again, I'm losing track of the number. So if somebody has a really pressing question, please feel free to get online and ask your question directly. Thank you.
But ma'am, I think you can ask the panelists to switch on their cameras.
Yes, of course. Please do switch on the cameras. Please be with us. Join us on video if you can do that. And meanwhile, our participants can start asking their questions. Pooja, would one of you want to take the questions and say them aloud, or would you prefer that participants ask questions themselves? But we will really have to be quick so that we can let many people speak.
Ravi, a few questions. Ravi sir, have you?
Some of them have raised their hands, so they can unmute and speak. Can you please?
Yeah, please do that. Please do that. Yes.
Samina.
Samina Tabassum, please do that. Please start speaking. Ask your question to them. We can't hear you, Samina.
Soumya was there raising her hand.
Ravi, maybe just to save time, would you like to ask their questions on their behalf? If they have the questions are in the chat box, I think that would be easier.
Hello,
One question.
Sir,
yes, please.
Yes. Sir, there are three questions on the chat box. They can begin with that.
Yes. So one question was about process-oriented assessment. So how effective was this process-based assessment? I think it was addressed to Asli Siglam. Yeah.
Aslam, would you like to respond to that?
I was typing in the chat. Could you please come again? Can you repeat the question?
How effective was your process-based assessment? I mean, you said it created anxiety.
Yeah, all right. Let me talk about that. I think one of the gems of this remote online teaching and learning was that the thing is we had a project paper, so it was a group project. They have to read about external texts which were about sustainability, and they have to make use of information, ideas from the content, from the course content into their writing. So we structured the assessment task reading into writing, and we made sure that students would benefit from in-classroom materials. So we wanted to revise the in-class material. So they write a composition, for instance, and they are required to make use of classroom content. And we hold, we had stages, we scaffolded the task. Submission 1 and then submission 2. There was multi-drafting. We tried to make the students own their work, become committed to their project. And in the end, they had to present their work. And we graded certain skills at every interval. For instance, when they gave a presentation, we graded their speaking skills. So this process-oriented assessment task may draw students' attention, and may encourage them to own their work instead of saying, I don't want to do this, or maybe I can just very easily copy and paste it without spending time. And we try to shift the students' attention to learning oriented assessment measures.
Related to that, about providing feedback. So if teachers cannot provide proper feedback, teachers will not be motivated. So how to provide feedback which will motivate them?
Yeah, and if I could just add to that, there's another question on feedback. How can we take learners' feedback freely without them feeling scared and seeing teachers as all-knowing. So, students, how would you give them feedback that is kind and perhaps doesn't scare them away? Yeah, Asla or anyone of the panelists.
I can answer this one. So, as a part of this learning-oriented assessment task, we wanted to engage the students cognitively more into the process. And we made use of learner-centered criteria. So we asked students to, engage in self-evaluation, peer evaluation. And the first time when I sent my students to breakout rooms, nothing happened. They didn't talk to one another. There was silence, etc. But then we said, maybe you can give feedback by using these words. Maybe you can use these descriptors from the criteria. And we tried to, as a teacher, I tried to establish a culture. I think without establishing an online learning culture in which students need to be active participants and assume responsibility for their own learning, kind of pays off. It doesn't happen very quickly, but when it happens, then students feel responsible for giving their ideas, opinions in a nice manner, constructively, and it creates a positive classroom atmosphere. So I would highly advise that.
Thank you, Asla. Mohammed Qasim is raising his hand. Would you like to add to that? Yes. And thank you for the detailed tools that you shared in the chat box.
Sure.
Awesome.
Sure, thank you. My pleasure. Thank you so much. I would like to add to the way we feedback. That was excellent answer. I like that. Okay, I hope you're hearing correctly.
Yes, go on. Yeah.
I would say we have generally two formats of ways of communication. One is oral and the other is written feedback. I mean, I would make my best judgment from the assignment. At some point, I would simply use practicing, like the Word document. I would open the Word document, I will go to the practicing features, and I will highlight or leave a comment on my student's academic assignment if that is a written text. So I can, but I should be very careful about the use of colors and, the language, because sometimes it is not easy to communicate all your thoughts in a written text. For that matter, if the feedback requires a lot of comments or so, I would use oral feedback. Like I will leave my students' voice on the point, because sometimes leaving a voice is much better than typing or using typing. There are several reasons for that. Like sometimes, you're afraid not to be misunderstood. So you can use your voice in a kind, pitch of voice, the tone of your voice, and the way you say, the way you address people. It's all about, these all actually matters in communications, because, we all experience being misunderstood at some point, even with our classmates, with colleagues, only because we could not use the right emoji. we could not.
Yeah, thank you.
We could not actually, keep that sense of openness or friendliness or maybe whatever we really meant. So we have to practice caution. When it comes to giving feedback, this is the most sensitive part of teaching. I think if a voice can help, so simply leave a voice message with, hey, I think you did a good job. And if you could possibly see the tone of voice, comforts the students or comforts the learners because of that matter. But that would be difficult in writing, I think. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I think with the whole idea of staying connected with students and giving them feedback is also the question of homeschooling and blended learning. I see a few questions, and maybe Azmira could respond to that. How does that happen? How does blended learning happen? How does homeschooling and home learning happen? Would you like to respond to that, Azmira?
Yes, of course. I was typing to Sharia to answer the question. Now, in blended learning, you have to use all the available learning modalities that is available in your school or in your area. For example, in our case, it's actually more of the job of the teachers, because in our case, as a teacher, we use or we make our self-learning modules, which is coming from the learning materials of the students, the traditional one. So what we did was that we are making our own, and then we are giving it for students so they can learn it at home. Now, if they have the questions, like because we cannot do the face-to-face kind of learning, that is where the blended learning comes in. You can use technology, like you can chat your teacher. You can use the internet if you cannot, because you cannot do the face-to-face. If you cannot understand the self-learning materials that was given to you, you can use the internet, as what Sir Muhammad said, that everything is open. With the internet, everything is open to you. You can learn on your own. That is why we call it the self-learning module, because if you cannot understand it and you are shy to ask your teacher, because this is the mentality of our students, right? I think this is true to everyone, that the students are very afraid to ask their teacher because they might think that their teacher will scold them for not understanding what was given to them. So if you cannot do that, no, every other modalities that is available to you, if you have the access to internet, you can do that. And I also mentioned about the TV and radio. In Sir Betson said that they are also using the TV and radio. Now we are using it as an aid. So what we did here in the Philippines is there is a certain time in the TV or in the radio where this kind of topic is shown in the radio and in the TV, where you can find, if you cannot understand the self-learning, the modules that was given to you, and it is discussed in the TV or it is discussed in the radio, then you can find that time and listen to that. So it is like more of everything at the same time. So you are making use of every available resources to you, because you see, in this time, it's not only the teacher that is all-knowing, right? We are not all-knowing. You can have your parents. We also use the parents and the stakeholders as also the means to let their children teach their students. I mean their children. This is actually what we do also here in the Philippines, that we also have the parents assessment checklist, where we are engaging our parents in, we are monitoring parents if they are helping their learners, I mean their children when they get the modules. So that's how you do the blended learning. And also the homeschooling. Yes. In terms of homeschooling also, actually the teachers here in the Philippines, it's everything, all the burdens are on the teachers. In homeschooling, the teachers goes, especially the community schools, they go to the home of their learners. As in, they go to the home of the learners and they teach the learners there. Or in some cases, in one area, for example, if they in one area they have 2, 3, 4 students in that area, they are looking for a place, like for example the veranda, or a place where that common people can go, and then the teacher can go there and then teach 1, 2, 3 students in homeschooling.
Okay, thank you. That was interesting. I suppose for us, because we are not able to physically connect, that might be a challenge. However, I think these are interesting ideas to explore, especially the sharing responsibility with parents, and I think this is part of the democratization that Naushad was talking about. I think we are a little short of time, but I do have 2 raised hands from Rohit and Pulaya. If one of you might be able to switch on your audio and ask a question directly, please go ahead and do that. If you can't, maybe Ravi could help us. Samina,
hello,
sorry.
this is Rohit.
Yeah, Samina also. Yeah, please do ask your question, and then keep it short if you don't mind. Thank you.
Yeah, hello,
Please
this is
go
Rohit.
ahead.
Can I? Yeah.
Yes, Rohit, please go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, so my question is for Miss Asmira. I very well resonate with her sentence of making the best use of available resources. I just wanted to know if she can share a sample of the modules, since she mentioned that the modular learning was the focus of the whole whole process. If she can share a sample of that or a website of such resources where we can see how these resources were used, especially in a language classroom. Thank you.
I think that is something, if you don't mind, I am sure the organizers will be able to make you connect with Asmera, and then maybe she can share that with you, unless Asmera can put it in the chat box. So I hope that is okay.
I just want to get this. This is like, for example, the kind of modules that we are making. For example, this is an example. I don't know if you can see it. For example, this is an academic, English for academic and professional purposes. So we are making this one. I hope you can see this. So this is like the example of a module. So in this, all the lessons are here, and then we give this all to our students. I don't know if this will help you, but I can give you a copy if you want to.
That would be really nice of you. That would be really nice. Maybe we will have time for one more question, perhaps.
May I ask a question, please?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you so much, ma'am. My question is for Naushad sir. Naushad sir, thank you so much for sharing your perspectives on online teaching. Could you please shed more light on empathy and resilience in testing?
Thank you. Thank you. That was an important question.
Yeah, that's a very important question, and I was working on a project where we tried to look at these issues. You see, this online modality has made assessment practices highly challenging for us, because by assessment, we the teachers basically mean two things. I mean, if we can ensure the validity and the reliability, then we are somehow happy that, okay, we could finally assess what we were supposed to assess. But when we cannot reach out to the students, or we cannot bring them physically into the classroom, but we have to take the classes, the main challenge is, some of the audience already put a question on plagiarism, and that's the main challenge. So, for example, we cannot take time-bound tests every time, because someone is located in some geographical area where there are network issues. Students are from different socio-economical background. Everyone doesn't have the updated gadgets. So, and also there are affordances issues. For example, many students are not very comfortable with the technological stuff, and they are also not very good in typing. So whenever you give some online assessment which is time bound, these types of challenges come up. Well, but there are some other ways out which I have experienced. For example, many students they actually wrote their answers by hand and took photos and sent us back. That is one way. One student told me, sir, instead of sending you the written documents, will you allow the oral answer? So she recorded the answer orally and sent it to me. And I found it quite interesting, because I never thought in this way. Then later on, I was thinking that I was not teaching speaking or writing skill. I was teaching a content-based course, so I'm not really going to evaluate the spelling and the grammatical aspects in the written modality. Yes, as long as I get the answer on the content, I should be able to mark her answer. So then we move to the one-day exam or take-home exam idea, or more subjective kind of ideas. Okay, so we give the question papers today and we collect the answers tomorrow at the same time. And then the plagiarism issues came up, because someone wrote the answer before, and then someone else copied from his or her answers. And now how to deal with these challenges. So you see, I mean, the flexibility in approach contradicts with the idea of reliability and validity. So I think these are the challenges, but we need to inculcate, the positive values in them, and we need to also train them to be aware of plagiarism and how to avoid plagiarism. Many students have the idea that teachers perhaps don't read their scripts carefully. but we do. We do. And we actually write the plagiarism policy, which is obviously zero tolerance. But during this pandemic, we are giving them some chances. So when it used to be face-to-face classes, we would directly give them zero. But now we are not doing that because they are already in some sort of mental stress, and they are experiencing different kind of trauma. So we give them opportunity, one opportunity. Okay, so these are the places where you have plagiarized. Could you rewrite them and resubmit?
Naushad, I'm really sorry to stop you. I'm really sorry that I'm very conscious that we have moved over time. And Pooja, I think this is the point where we will have to stop. I had a wonderful time listening to our panelists. We've had a wonderful set of questions, very pertinent questions coming up. I'm really sorry that we have not been able to accommodate everybody's questions, but I hope that my panelists today would be happy to have the organizers transfer some of the questions to you personally, and when you have time, maybe you could respond to participants individually. There's so much to learn from all of you, and I'm really grateful that, in spite of the time differences and perhaps other challenges, you agreed to be with us today, and you have shared so many valuable insights with all our the audience, the global audience here. With that, I think it is time for us to close today's panel. I apologize once again for all the technical errors from my end, and I am really grateful to everybody. Thank you, stay safe, keep well, and with this we come to an end of today's panel discussion. We will take a short break and then move on to the presentation. Yes, Azmira, last words? You get 30 seconds.
Just waiting.
30 seconds.
I'm just waiting to say goodbye.
And we reciprocate the same thing to you, the entire RIE and IT team, and also the audience who have listened to us for the last 2 hours. Thank you.
Thank you. Other panelists, would you also like to say goodbye?
Yeah, goodbye to you.
Thank you so much.
Can
you just ask that we can have a screenshot? Just for a second.
Can we have a group with this?
I think so. Let's have the slides. All right? Okay.
All right. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you so much. Over to you. Ravi, over to you. Thank you. Thank you. It's been a sheer pleasure for me to have moderated this session. Thank you all so much. Bye-bye.
1 second. Please, 1 second.
I would like to invite Inessa for the work time.
I must thank our director, Vashwara C. Gavanhalli, and coordinator, Dr. Pujagiri, for giving me this opportunity to propose the vote of thanks, the last item on the agenda. And it has been a confluence of wisdoms and ideas because of the mighty minds from different parts of the world have participated and shared their experience. I'm pretty sure the conference delegates, other presenters have got a lot of insight to deal with this present condition and make it new normal. Okay. So first of all, I would like to express our sincere gratitude to Professor Padmini Bhunya Borua Madam for acceding to our request and has joined this to moderate the panel discussion. And your questions, and first of all, your questions that you have raised to the panelists is really wonderful, and let me not repeat because of time constraint what you said. We simply feel fortunate to have you amidst us with all your radiance of dynamism scattered all around. So on behalf of the Director, Business of English, South India, Bangalore, on behalf of the Director of IT for Science, Dr. Gurumurthy Kashinath, my other colleagues, and on behalf of all the participants, the delegates and the paper presenters, I express our sincere gratitude to Padmini Madam. I have had the good fortune of being her colleague Guwahati and working quite a number of years. And today I feel that we are still working together. So on behalf of director and my own behalf, I express our sincere gratitude to you for taking this responsibility and sparing so much of your invaluable time for our conference. Thank you so much, madam. And next, I would like to express our sincere gratitude to all the panelists, Dr. Asla Lidis, Dr. Saglam from Istanbul, Turkey, and then Ms. Asmera Batugun from Philippines, and Mr. Benson Bonaya Uyo from Kenya, and Ms. Feroza Irkulobha Maliku Jiepna from Uzbekistan, and Dr. Mia Muhammad Nushat Kabir from Bangladesh, and our old friend Mr. Muhammad Qasim Jami from Afghanistan, who kindly accepted our request and participated as a panelist and contributed a lot, sharing their own experiences during this pandemic and making this panel discussion to wonderful grand success. So on behalf of you, on behalf of our director, on behalf of the coordinator, Dr. Pujarpuri, and co-coordinator, Mr. Suman Bandi, on behalf of other colleagues of mine, and on my behalf, I express our sincere gratitude to you all for sharing your experiences and giving us a lot of insights to make it really new normal. And I would also like to thank each and every delegates and paper presenters who have attended this panel discussion and making this program a grand success. So once again, I express our sincere gratitude to you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Over to Pooja. Over to Pooja.
Thank you, Lisa, and thank you to Benson from Kenya as well. So at the end, I would like to thank everybody. Lisa has formally thanked all, my director, RIESI, the panelists, the plenary speakers, everybody who has been here today, despite the time zone, as Padmini Madam was saying. Benson has got up almost at 2 o'clock in the midnight, and Ashley Madam has also been a variation of time. Because still, despite of that, they have been able to be here today. There have been many learnings that we have assimilated from the experiences, the ideas that each one of you have shared today. And my understanding, my experience of this pandemic has been that, especially when the lockdown took place and we were inside our homes for many days together, I was desperate to come back to the office. And just 2 days back, the office started and we all rushed to be, and we're happy to see everybody together. So that's what I imagine, that probably we are thinking from the students' perspective, that what I have heard, that the bell, when the last bell rings, all the students were very happy to leave school and rush back to their homes, either in college or in school. Perhaps my understanding and from my experience is that maybe hoping perhaps that the new normal will change into normal, and then we'll have a rush of students coming back with a happier faces, and they'll be more happy to be at the school. So with this words, I thank everybody, and for the plenary room, the session to the plenary room closes now, and we will be dispersing to the parallel sessions. Before we go ahead to the parallel sessions, there are the links. Yogi, how would they get into the parallel sessions? And as you share the links to them, I have a quick few instructions that I would like to give to the chairpersons. Kindly ensure that the PPTs are ready, 1 point. And next, the time factor is very important because we have large number of paper presenters. By 9 minutes, about 8 minutes, the indication can be given that the time is up for them. And besides that, yes, there might be, besides that, kindly do check that some of them are using PPTs, whereas some of them would not be using, so the oral presentation also can be taken care of. And yes, so these are the couple of instructions. So with this, they join? Mr. Gurumati, would you like to give instructions as to how they join now? Just quickly take over.
Yeah, I can do that. So I've just shared on the chat window link of the page. I think all of you can see the link in the chat window. Same link is also available in the Telegram groups. We have been sharing this link in the Telegram groups since the morning. So all of you are welcome to click on the link that is relevant to your room. So make sure that you pick up the correct room. And once you click on the link, you will have the same procedure. The big blue button procedure is identical for the main room as well as for the other rooms. So you can click and join the room. In any case, anybody has any difficulty or any problem, you can type your query in the Telegram group and one of our colleagues will respond to you. I think Pooja ma'am mentioned the timings, but I'll just repeat it. So presentations are for 10 minutes duration, and you will get a warning at the end of 9 minutes to wrap up your talk, and then at the 10th minute we'll again tell you to conclude your talk. It's very important to keep to time because we have packed presentations in all the groups, and if the earlier speakers take much more time than they should, then we will be unfair on the later speakers. So I request all of you to keep that in mind. That's the only announcement I have. If you have any, your slides should already be uploaded in your rooms, and you can confirm that the slide has been uploaded in discussion with the chairperson and the support team member who will be in the room. And if there is any issues there, again you can share your presentation file through Telegram. Let's use Telegram for communicating both issues we face as well as anything we want to share, like the presentation file. Let's remember the 9 plus 1 equal to 10 minutes time available for each of the presenters, so that we can wrap up in time and we have time for discussions also. If there are any queries or questions, please type in the chat window, or we will conclude the session because we are already behind time. 2:30 the parallel session that will start. We are 2:36 now. But if there are any questions, you can type in the chat window. I'll wait for 1 minute, and then I'll request Pooja ma'am to close the session. Any questions or doubts, please type in the chat window. So your files will already be available in the Big Blue Button room. Log into the Big Blue Button room for your particular parallel session by clicking on the link available in the page which I have shared in the chat window above. The same link is also been shared in the Telegram groups multiple times today. So if you click on the room relevant to your presentation, that BBB link for that, it will have a tiny URL something with your team name and the room number. You will join the Big Blue Button room. Okay. Any questions? Otherwise, we can close the session now. And I want to thank Dr. Padmini especially for wonderfully moderating the discussions, and I think it was really enjoyable to listen to all of you. Wonderful presentations, and thank you so much for taking time off from all that you are busy with, and also it's a pleasure to hear people from different countries, not just the Indian experiences, although we do find many experiences are quite similar. Yeah, if there are no questions, I think there are no questions. Everybody's clear how to connect to the parallel presentations room. Pooja ma'am, would you like to take forward and close? All the links are available in the page which we have shared, Padmavati madam. So if you can just click on that particular link, all rooms links are available there. So kindly take the trouble to click on the link that I have just shared. All the BBB room links are available on that page. Go to room 9 or room 8 or whichever room you want to, click on the link and join the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.